Hello, good evening, and happy Friday. We are coming to you live with episode 14 of our weekly album discussion streams. I'm Matt, and tonight I'm joined by Cam,
Hello, how's it going?
and we've got Brad with us too.
Hey, how's it going?
So, together we are Ballpark Music, and nearly every week we pick an album that came out on a Friday, give ourselves a week with it, then come back together on a stream for an in-depth discussion. No scoring, no tastemaking, because music is not sports. If you like what you see, give us a follow on the socials and we'll let you know when we're going live. Boys, we are back. We are looking better than ever. I will say that. We've got our brand new overlay in place. And, only the people who are with us for that stream last week where we were talking over the football will have seen this before. It's debuting for the first time on one of our Friday night album discussion streams. I will say I forgot to add the intro music to this scene on OBS Streamlabs. So that laugh at the start of it was me going, where's the music? Where's the fucking music? It's not there. We're going without. But hey, did absence make the heart grow fonder last week? Are you guys ready to talk some music now?
I don't know. I'm ready for more Euros. I think we should pivot direction completely.
You want to talk Wales, Denmark tomorrow? What about you, Brad? Do you want to talk more football or do you want to talk more music?
I'm glad to be back. I just think it was very unfortunate that Cameron, your mic cut out like towards the first half of the word direction. So I think we possibly got erection on stream.
Wait, you guys aren't just constantly popping erections on stream? Is that just me?
I don't even know how to respond to that, honestly. I don't even know what to say anymore.
But hey,
I potato quality. I had some technical issues.
and you're not doing too badly either. I'm going to say that right now. I might fiddle with a few settings and let you guys talk for a little bit. But what I will say, you sound a lot better than when we were talking before this stream, which is great, which is really great.
It does make me happy, although because we were having so many technical difficulties, I have forgotten my entire setup. So I have absolutely nothing I need with me. Which is useful. So let's see how this goes.
Fantastic. Well, hey, look, regardless, people who are tuning in tonight, thanks for sticking with us, checking out our new look. It gives us so much more flexibility. You guys won't be able to see this, but we've got a heat map right now going on Cam's face, and I don't know, I can do, what other fun things can I do? I can turn Brad into something else, I think. Grayscale Brad, fantastic, Brad Noir. Now I'm here twice, and I'm also Noir, which is great. We will just switch that back there. And hey, look, through the magic of cinema, we've got Cam back as well. We are all over the place tonight. Gents, I have got to ask you, what are you drinking? What's going to get you through this?
I'm not drinking anything. One of the things I meant to do while we were having technical issues was go and get some White Claw, but alas, I didn't have time. And the reason I just turned my camera off is because I'd forgotten to get my e-liquid and my payment run dry. So drinking nothing, Matt. I had some water a minute ago, but that was it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Water's good though. You got to keep hydrated. What's up, Lala Kukalala? Good to see you in chat tonight. And first person to show up on our chat box on screen as well. Fantastic. Brad, are you drinking something a little more than water?
Barely more than water. I think to go with this high quality video content that you're receiving, I have got an incredibly cheap beer from Aldi.
Fantastic.
Which costs £2.49 for 4 cans. It's called the 1079 Project, and it's actually all right.
I've seen that. Like they're trying to make that their kind of little bit of like their craft beer thing, right?
Yeah, but it's ridiculously cheap because their other craft beer, like their small cans, are still like I think around £1.10 a can, something like that. And these ones are £2.49 for 4, which is just crazy.
Bring us the news we really want. That's what Audi hard seltzers are. We're a hard seltzer stream.
Next week we will do Audi hard seltzers.
So continuing the theme, right? I mean, I'm now joining you fully on the hard seltzer hype, Cam. Again, loyal viewers last week will have seen Cam enjoying a lot of hard seltzer, and you've been reviewing a few new ones for us week after week. I came across one which I brought along tonight. This is another brand that I haven't seen us do here, so I thought I'd pick it up, try it out, give the live review, everything else. I did mean to open it at this point and not have a taste before, but it was very, very stressful just as we were kicking off, so I may have had a sip of this Topo Chico Cherry Acai hard seltzer.
I saw this in Tesco's, right?
Yeah, they had a variety pack that was cheap.
Special.
That was cheaper than the cheaper than the offer on the White Claw variety pack. So it's like, yep, nope, I'll take that one. That's all right. You can definitely taste the acai. I prefer the sweetness of the cherry, but hey, Topo Chico. I think we will go for that one again in the future. So, with that out of the way, let's move on to tonight's album discussion. And we've got Norwegian indie folk pop duo Kings of Convenience in focus tonight. They released their 4th studio album, Peace or Love, last Friday. And here's some excerpts from a press release about the album and a little bit of a cut down long read that was in the Independent as well. So this came out on Virgin Records. Beloved Norwegian folk duo Kings of Convenience, made up of Eric Glambek Boe and Erland Oy, are back with their new album Peace or Love. The duo's last album was 2009's Declaration of Dependence. Peace or Love was recorded over the course of 5 years in 5 different cities. It is the sound of 2 old friends exploring the latest phase of their lives together and finding new ways to capture that elusive magic. And it features 11 songs about life and love with the alluring beauty, purity, and emotional clarity that you would expect from Kings of Convenience. Theirs is an odd dynamic. When they are interviewed, they're interviewed separately via Zoom with just a couple of minutes when they share the call. They're very, very aware of their differences, even if they don't necessarily note the same differences. Oy says keeping friendships going over a long period of time counts as success. Bo says of his bandmate, quote, "After a while, he will get tired of you if you are there too long." Bo thinks it's, quote, "kind of a miracle they are still together after 20 years. 12 years separate Peace or Love from its predecessor Declaration of Dependence. It's not that the pair have been lazy. They both have an array of other projects, usually sharing the same dappled melancholy of their music as a duo, even if they drift off in other musical directions. It was more that they could never get this record right." So, Independent needs to take a look at their proofreading. That threw me. Kings of Convenience then. Cam, I appreciate that you might not remember us picking this record with total clarity. I don't think any of us remember picking this record with total clarity. But you did seem to suggest that you had some knowledge of the duo at the time.
No, I had no idea who they were before we listened to this week, honestly. Couldn't have told you. I think we were Harry at the end of the last stream. We were doing the football and picked a name out of the hat. Basically, that's my knowledge of Kings of Convenience.
So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to put a facade across of pretending to know anything about Kings of Convenience. Brad, I think you're in the same spot as well. What about Norwegian folk music more generally? And we'll keep with the folk proviso until we just drop it and say Norwegian music or music from Bergen.
Not Norwegian folk, but definitely Norwegian music from Bergen. In the past, no longer.
That was a ballpark after hours, I believe.
Yeah, it was. It was. It was. Gosh, so okay, look. All right. What I want to do then, usually we would talk about our engagement with these genres. We would talk about our engagement with, the band. We're pretty much going blank slate on this one. So, what I want to talk about tonight in this little section before we kick off into the album, is actually talk about bands that do what Kings of Convenience have done here. Disappear for 10 years and release an album. We haven't exactly got between us a tide mark for their music. But is that something that you guys tend to find has worked for bands in the past? I'm thinking about a band that's gone on a hiatus, a band that might just take their sweet time when it comes to releasing an album. Anything else like that? Is it normally a triumphant return or does it hit a bit flat?
And there was a hype about the last. They'd really. I think it just depends about. Its album comeback is good, and if it's worth it.
I think we may have gotten the vague gist of what you were saying there. I think we lost a lot of the band names or anything else like that that came up.
He said Tool.
Tool. Yeah, good example there. Good example. Brad, how about you?
Yeah, I wonder if we were just going to try and style that one out. Just pretend it wasn't happening and just nod and agree. Yeah.
He's always right anyway, so may as well be now.
Yeah, just agree with what he said about Tool. Yeah, no, it does tend to be a kind of hit or miss scenario, I guess. I think a lot of it depends on the reasons for coming back as well. You can go away and then you come back with either a vision to do some more music or a vision to earn some more money. So I think which side of that line you fall on has a big impact on the quality after this kind of hiatus.
So it's interesting you say that, because when I thought about hiatuses, I didn't have any examples that very quickly jumped to mind for me of like band taking 10 years between albums or anything like that in terms of the stuff that I enjoy listening to. I mean, obviously, like Fall Out Boy took a hiatus that was like 4 or 5 years, something like that. And I was very pleased to see them come back and do the music that they wanted to be doing. I don't know if it's necessarily good, but like Fall Out Boy have always been a pop punk band. Well, no, they've always been a pop band pretending to be a pop punk band. So to see them come back and just go, we're doing pop now, it's like, okay, great, this makes sense, this is fine. It's going to be really interesting, I think, to see what goes on with MCR with their reunion shows when they come down on this side of the pond next year. Because that's going to be 10 years on from their breakup, and I think they're writing an album too. Yeah, I think more often than not, I tend to think of like the big long breaks then resulting in a disappointment rather than a triumph. But either way, it's really interesting. I think, you think about the albums that we have been discussing over recent weeks. And, it's been a lot of Griselda, or it's been a lot of talk about Weezer. And, what were our 2 takeaway comments from both of those? Stop releasing albums every single year, week, month, whatever. Here we have got the opposite end of the scale in Kings of Convenience.
Yeah, I think it's a funny one as well, because a band like MCR, they're going to take a hiatus, and I think expectations are going to be very divided about what they're going to bring out when they come back. And there's going to be people who are expecting them to come back kind of exactly where they left off. And then there are going to be people who are quite interested to see if how they've kind of developed their sound, how they've kind of matured, as obviously they've matured over the last 10 years. And I think there's going to be a split between people who want more of the same and people who want to see where they are now. kind of thing.
I don't know. I think with that band in particular, obviously Frank Iero has had his solo project, and it's been leaning towards hardcore, crowdways, some stuff that's been quite operatic. So I think if you kind of meld those two together, you're gonna make them sound anyway. That's what they've been doing in the past. So you put it all together, then way.
No, definitely. So yeah, I mean, loyal followers of this series will know that our last discussion, we changed up the format for the album discussion section. I am pleased to say that tonight we are returning to the much vaunted track by track style. So let's kick off then, and we start with rumors. There has been at least one occasion this week where I sat down to put peace and love, peace or love. I've got too many things written on my screen here on, and just ended up putting Rumors by Fleetwood Mac on instead. So Brad, is this Rumors better than that Rumors?
No, no. That is the. I mean, you read Rumors and you I don't know. My mind automatically goes to Fleetwood Mac every time.
Yep.
It's very, very like harsh comparison to make. No, I mean, again, I think the first few times I listened to this, it kind of passed me by. I don't think I was really in the mood for the vibe that it's putting off, but it sounds nice, I think you're instantly drawn to kind of make a comparison somewhere with like Simon and Garfunkel or some of those like kind of classic songwriting like power duos. It's a very simple kind of stripped back sound to kick off with, two guitar and vocals. Beautiful tone on the guitar, vocals recorded immensely well. Some simple but very effective kind of harmonies, mostly in thirds here. It's a really, really full sound for what is for the most part like the two guys. Yeah, it's nice. I think I'm gonna have this to say a lot about a lot of songs on this. There are a lot of nice songs. Nothing particularly grabbed me about this song and got me engaged with the album, I will say.
Boy, how to it is when listening to the same album. I just come back, started listening to this after spending a week in Scotland. I was still into the vibe of this 100.
Cam, I'm afraid we've lost you pretty much. We are getting about every other word out of you. So yeah, okay. He's jumped off. He's jumped back for us. And hey,
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Perfect.
Oh. Yeah, no. So I was just saying that basically I was in the mood for this all week because I'd had a week in the wilderness and it was quite floaty, quite dreamy, and quite melancholy. It was perfect for that. It's weird how an album can hit two people completely different way. Same album.
No, definitely. And I mean, I think a lot of this, and, every album that we listen to every single week, right? It's very much down to the setting that you're in. Like, we end up talking about this a lot, especially in our sum ups. It's just like, the nature of how we listen to this tends to inform a lot of our feelings about it. But, as you were saying, let's go back to my first listen of this. Rumors comes in. And, I skimmed through the Wikipedia article for Fleetwood Mac's Rumors again while I'm doing it and notice that it only gets 4 sentences in before it starts talking about cocaine. But anyway, talking about this Rumors, I mean, my first impression was like total surprise. I had an idea in my head of what like Norwegian indie was going to sound like, but again, we had done no background on this duo before we started to listen to it, so I get a lot of folk, and I'm very happy. I'm a sucker for some folk. I was also in the midst of a stressful day at work when I first put this on. It hit around 3 o'clock, and I was like, I need a cup of tea. I'm going to stick this album on. And man, was that the right choice, because like you are just immediately surrounded by a, a luscious sound. Really, it's so fulsome. The guitars are so soft and bright. Like they literally sound like they're being strummed so gently, but they are still making this enveloping sound. It really sort of cuts through to you a little bit when you can hear the pick against the strings or anything, because it's quite rare. I think in this song especially, and a few other places. But Brad, you touched on it there. I'm all about this harmony. It's in distinct opposition to the disquiet that we read about in the Independent article and the press release there. Eric and Erlin's voices are just like so perfectly in tune with each other, even when they aren't going down what I'm guessing you were talking about there, sort of the most obvious, the most common types of harmonies, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was, I think, part of the issue with it not really drawing me in. And this is a very shallow comparison, but I've already made it once, so I might as well restate it now. But Simon and Garfunkel, the kind of blend of the vocal, the harmonies, all very similar, and something I had kind of heard before. So nothing's blown me away. And I think a lot of it was mood, and like you, and had a stressful day at work, but I didn't really have the patience to kind of get absorbed by it. And I think maybe something like Gojira would have suited better on that day that I had. So yeah, I'm definitely willing to admit that it's my problem and not the album, and it definitely wins me back over a bit further on. But nothing earth-shattering here, nothing that really grabbed me, especially when the title track is called Rumors.
I agree with Brad 100%. Obvious first thing to Simon and
I'm sorry, dude. We have lost you again. This fight is not surviving here. I'm gonna pull you down and jump into a text chat if you can still hear us, and just let us know what you're thinking, and we will play this by ear. Yeah, Simon and Garfunkel's a very obvious place to go. I think in terms of the comparisons that you're gonna make. And yeah, it reminded me a lot of, I think, the acoustic albums that like my parents would put on when I was a kid to try and get me to fall asleep as well. Like there was something very just like, I feel safe within this song, which again, it's a nice thing to have every now and then.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, this is so like I did do a bit of back reading and a bit of digging into the back catalogue of this when I finished the album, because like I said, it did win me over in the end. So and it kind of ended up skipping me back to some of their older albums. But I think when they first came out, they were kind of heralded as leading this slight folk revival. Obviously, other folk revival bands are currently in the news at the minute. But yeah, it's a classic sound. It's done very well, but like I said, nothing like earth-shattering here that grabbed me about this song particularly.
No, definitely. So let's move on now to Rocky Trail. Rocky Trail was the first single released from this album, and Kings of Convenience, chose this song as their one to re-announce themselves to the world, right? This was 10 years on from their last release. I can kind of understand why, right? If Rumors started in that fashion where it was very much lulling me to sleep, or Brad, it wasn't totally engaging you, it starts off in a very different way. What are you thinking about it here? What are you thinking about this album?
So we've been here before, and and I think it was on. Who was it with Black? It was Black Midi. I think the second track was a bossa, and here we are again with a bossa. Would you say it sounded loungy?
I certainly would. I certainly would. I started writing it down and I'm just like, I swear I write down loungy every single week. And I'm doing it again here. So am I right about that? I'm glad that you're saying that we might be here.
If you thought the second track on Black Midi was loungy, then that is why, because it's another bossa. And it's nice, there's a bit more energy coming through here and it starts to kind of draw me in a bit. Really nice fingerpick guitar again, and a cool like violin stringy kind of hook, kind of drag you in straight away. It's a good time, I think, to talk about the kind of mixing, the production, because it's becomes clear how like simple again it is, but very well done. With the two guitarists, you've pretty much, I think, throughout this got one in your left ear and one in your right ear majority of the time. But yeah, it's another nice one. I said I was going to say nice a lot through this. Kind of more of the first, but a bit more upbeat. You've got some more really nice vocal harmonies coming through. I think the string part here is really the kicker. I think that kind of hooks you and grabs you on it though.
Yeah, so I it's just such a groove, right? It's one of those songs that you can't help like immediately starting to click your fingers to. And I started moving around to it pretty much every single time that it came on. It's wonderful. It's that upbeat tempo, it's that vibe to it. It's so different from what Rumors started off like. You've got the body of the guitar being knocked pretty much the whole way through it too. It's great. We have actually got Cam coming into us. You will see him flashing up on screen as well, which is great. Who says he agrees. He thought it was a bossa nova track too. On the production, I thought it was amazing how close they both sounded and how on top of you all the instruments were.
Is that what we're doing now for the rest of the stream? Is Cam on text?
I think that's a good idea. We'll get him to feed in. I want to know what he thinks about this record as well.
Yeah.
I think the other interesting thing about Rocky Trail, is how it crests and falls in really interesting ways. There's some moments where it's very finely telegraphed, I think, in a way that you feel everything's going to start fading out. But instead you just have a new element that comes along and picks up the slack. It's the vocals early on, it's the strings like you were saying in certain places. There's one point where you just have like a piano just like play one chord and disappear for a second and then start descending, and it's just comes back up, picks everything back up and gets moving again. And again, so much harmony.
Yeah, and again, like nothing particularly earth-shattering about the harmony, but it's one of those things that's always going to sound good, like two great singers in lockstep, blend really well together. Obviously, massive experience. Just goes really nicely with the simple instrumentation on this as a whole. Like you say, you might get the occasional bit of piano here, but this is very much a kind of acoustic guitar duo led thing. And I think when you do get some of those other elements creeping in, then it really makes an impact and like a memorable moment, like it's a really good use of space. You leave so much space in your arrangement and your instrumentation so that when these other elements do start to kind of crop through or pop through, you notice, it leaves an impact. Yeah, another nice bossa. I don't think at this point this album has really still grabbed me. I think that kind of starts to come as it develops a bit more, but you do get a taste of their kind of the instrumentals that they kind of throw into these songs as well. Some really beautiful just instrumental sections that you really just get lost in for the duration while there's nothing going on in the vocal.
So, the other interesting thing I think about this song, you've got that upbeat, you've got that bossa, you've got all of that. It's in total contrast to the lyrics, right? Which seem to be lamenting about, something that could have been. Beginning of the song, you've got a pleading for like a one last chance type scenario, which all culminates then into acceptance that, this situation, whatever it is, isn't working out. The rationalization that happens in the chorus is just so wonderfully done. I thought your shoes were good. I thought they would take you to the end of any road. I thought your back was strong, but I should have carried you to the top of the rocky trail. And like, you travel through each of these stages at incredibly breakneck pace, taken through by the music, taken through by all these instruments. And it just makes, the realizations that the subject is coming to, just so there's another level to all of it. It's really, really nicely done. Total breakneck speed. It's completely whirlwind. It's a shame Cam started talking about walking up mountains and things all of last week. So it would have been good to have him here for that part. But it's there aren't a lot of places where I think the writing on this album is particularly standout, but I think Rocky Trail is the point for me where how it marries up with the music, it's just done so well.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting contrast here to the first track as well, lyrically, especially. I think I felt like the first track, when I first listened, it's kind of straight to the point. There's not like a huge amount of imagery. It's quite direct. And quite straightforward, and then you do start to get some more interesting imagery come through here, like how you're to the top of the rocky trail, so high no sunlight is seen through winter. Some less like obvious, it's less like descriptive and more kind of metaphoric stuff going on here, which I thought was in contrast to the first track, definitely. Like you say, the contrast again between the themes and the music, very kind of, it's a beautiful instrumental in its own right, and then with some lyrics dealing with strife and difficult times, just lost.
It's good. I was just panicked because you dropped down a little bit.
No, okay. I just want.
We've got
what's going on in the background.
A couple of things happening here technically, but hey, while all of this happens and while I sort out our video, we've got a Cam here. That is fantastic.
I don't know if I'm any better, but I have tried.
I can hear you, and I can hear you incredibly clearly.
Yeah, and every single word, which is
amazing.
Look, you join us at a good time here, I will say, because we are about to move on to Comb My Hair. Hey guys, Matt coming to you from the video editing suite. One have escaped your notice that we had some technical issues with the stream. We even had our recording crash, but we got our best guys on it, and look at that. We fixed it. We've got some video for you so we can return you to your regularly scheduled album discussion. All right, so we continue to comb our way through this album, and we reach Comb My Hair. And I tell you what, guys, I am really struck by how bright the guitars continue to be at this point. We spoke about Simon and Garfunkel earlier, but when I put this album on earlier in the week and I had somebody listen to it, they brought up Bell and Sebastian straight away. And, I think with both of those groups, right, When I think of their music, I think about it being, melancholy music to go along with, some melancholy themes more often than not. It conveys a dark beauty throughout, but I get the sense that Kings of Convenience, at least musically, are staying quite bright. And they are still dealing with those darker lyrical themes. But yeah, I mean, do you guys feel the same way?
Yeah, not really actually. I think there's quite a lot of melancholy in in the music they write, even when it is sounding brighter. Their melodies are quite melancholic at places, more so later in the album than on this track. Their progressions are quite have like that undertone of melancholy. I'm sure Brad can figure out a better way to describe it in a second. But yeah, I think there's definite melancholy on this album, and I think it's subtle and it's cleverly done. But it's there and it's in line with that kind of classic American pop, that Simon and Garfunkel thing that these guys are obviously very, very inspired by. And if they say they're not, they're liars, because there's no way you can sound like this and not be inspired by um, those guys. I just want to say the little run up to the chorus and the little guitar run that the song ends on as well is absolutely stunning. It's one of my favorite sounds that you can make on a guitar. Is just a little run like that. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, how would I describe this other than melancholy? This is the second time round, so I'm going to try and remember what I said before, which was wistful, I think, is the only real way to describe this. So it's not quite melancholy, it's not quite, that obvious. You have got the juxtaposition there between, what is quite a floaty fingerpick guitar style of song and some darker themes, some melodies that kind of border on slightly aching and slightly melancholy, but I think on the whole it gives this like wistful impression. Again, so it's a really nice like flowing fingerpicked intro here. I've started to notice some really nice counterpoint going on between the guitars, so some nice counter melodies happening in there and some interesting like vocal melodies going on as well. So things that are like slightly unexpected from the vocal melodies, and I think that continues in a really nice way throughout this album. But the second phrase in the verse ends on that major seventh, which is kind of tense and leads really nicely then back into, immediately following that back into the tonic. Some more really nice instrumental interludes here, and I think that's the run up you're talking about, Cam. And some more kind of, I think, interesting interplays between the music and the lyrics going on here as well. There's a massive descending line that happens. I think it's when he says night, and it just feels like you keep falling and falling into the music, which was a big moment for me in kind of piquing my interest. And it's also where I kind of realized how nice it is to listen to like an album like this with like no auto tune, a really natural kind of sound across the whole spectrum of it. Yeah, like a different sound to the pop albums that we've been listening to. Again, harkening back to those like classics, it's kind of raw, but it's so pretty that it's hard to say it's raw. It's weird. It's raw, but very, very nice.
That's what I was going to say, Brad, as well. I've got written down, it almost tricks you into feeling like it's a raw album because it's got little imperfections here and there, and it's got little like intricacies that get picked up by really close miking technique. And it tricks you into thinking it is, but it's really not. It's really well produced. Like, it's stunningly produced. I think potentially one of my favorite productions of the year, in terms of what we've listened to so far, especially on the vocals. Like, I say masterclass a lot, but this really felt like a proper in-depth lesson on how to record vocals and how you can make it sound. It was stunning. There's just such an atmosphere to it. I feel like
that comes through in the way that they've chosen to record this. And it does go to show you don't need autotune all the time. You need to be afraid of that, of a natural vocal. You don't need to have walls and layers of sounds. You can just have a couple of instruments creating really complex layers of harmony. It's great.
Yeah, there's something really like intriguing and fascinating about, you know, making a full sounding production out of, again, what I've said is essentially 2 guitars and vocals, and like how much skill there is in that. You know, easy to make a chorus sound like a chorus when you've got like 5,000 synths that you're throwing into it, or like you're just layering more and more distorted guitars. But it's always really, really nice to hear a really well recorded acoustic guitar. You know, it's things like mic placement, it's things like the chain going in when you're recording it. It's just like stuff that is, you know, done with total class, total precision, total. You can hear the experience of recording acoustic instruments. You can hear the experience, and it is seeping out of your speakers and into your ears because they do sound so beautiful.
It's also really a deft touch on all of the instrumentation miking, I think, because it's so easy to overcompress an acoustic guitar because it can be quite a dynamic thing to record, or you know, over saturate it or something like that to get it because you haven't mic'd it up right or whatever. So it's so subtly done, such a deft touch on everything. It's just absolutely perfect.
Well, I'd be surprised if, I know it's their first release in 10 years, but I'd be surprised if separately they haven't recorded in 10 years, because, you know, a big part of getting a great acoustic sound is having musicians that know how to record a great acoustic sound. You know, there's not much you can do about it. You could have all the songwriting chops and, you know, all of that, all the technical chops, but unless you've spent the hours in the studio recording your guitar and you know what your guitar sounds like and you know how to get the best out of your guitar when you're recording just your acoustic guitar into a mic, then it's not going to sound like this. So I'd be surprised if, even though they haven't released anything in the last 10 years, they haven't been recording stuff, you know, separately or however it may be.
Yeah, you know, I think in terms of the juxtaposition, just kind of picking up on one of the points y'all were making about, you know, this versus some of the other albums that we have listened to. Again, I'm going to talk about the harmony, and I think I'm going to try my best not to talk about the harmony on every single one of these tracks, but it's so tempting to do. What really hit me is just the fact that, you know, I'm using the same word over and over again, but it's enveloping. It's that full surrounding that you've got. And it's so fascinating to me because we've had albums where like backing vocals have been delivered in monumental volume. And I'm talking volume in terms of the amount of voices that you've got delivering those backing vocals, like on the Gojira record, on the Olivia Rodrigo album. We've also had albums where the backing vocals have really taken the spotlight, like on the St. Vincent record as well. But here, you know, it's just 2 guys, like you've been saying, sitting in a room. And it's created one of my favorite vocal sounds, I think, that we have spoken about so far to this moment. It's wonderful. Really, really good. Really, really good. So, I think it's probably about time for us to move on to Angel then. We've got a little bit more of that groove sneaking back in again. And yeah, we listened to a lot of music, I think, with groovy vibes, considering how often that word gets mentioned on our stream. But Brad, what are you feeling about Angel?
Yeah, we're into another bossa. It's a really nice, airy kind of string intro over the strummed like mute guitar. Fairly simple chord progression again throughout. Some more interesting use of dynamics here, I think, for me. times where it just drops back to the one guitar on the vocal and it's quite stark. Even though for the like majority it's just two guitars and two vocals, still just having that one guitar, one vocal thing is a nice contrast there, and it kind of adds to the kind of isolation, I guess. It's mostly two notes for the melody of this song. It pretty much is two notes, I think, but again, done really well in a way you wouldn't really realize that it's just two notes if you're kind of not figuring it out on the piano as you listen to it, if you're not quite that sad. But yeah, it's
I don't know. I know it's not well, Brad.
okay.
I didn't set that out. It's like this is just too low.
Yeah, it is very simple, but I think that is kind of becoming an MOT for this point. You know, they always say leave minimalism to the minimalists, but it is minimalist in its own way. You've got things happening around you with the guitar parts, like the finger picking bits, but melody is simple. It's kind of driving. It's kind of, it feels like your focus should be drawn to that, but this is one of those like interesting moments where there's more kind of going on around the melody than there is in the melody. So the stuff that's happening around it kind of lends interest to it. So the melody might be sticking to two notes, but the harmony around it is changing, which means it doesn't feel like it's just two notes. You're kind of getting me.
This is something I wanted to ask you actually, Brett, because something I noticed about this song is I thought it was a very percussive, rhythmic vocal, and I kind of felt like because there wasn't any actual percussion instruments in it, there was the tap of the guitar, there was the rhythmic vocal. They were trying to create that kind of aspect of it with those things and the two notes, it being quite repetitive, and then flesh out the harmony with other instruments. I wondered if that was what was happening. That's what really caught my ear about this. And also, I thought this was a bossa song. It felt a little fast for that. I don't know if bossas can be that up tempo or are normally that up tempo. I'm not that familiar with the genre, but it felt quite quick for that thing, which kind of I think worked quite well, lended itself to it quite nicely.
Bossa is quite an expansive genre, and it's quite a. I think bossa gets applied to some things that are like Brazilian music. I mean, bossa nova was kind of seen as a bit of an Americanization of Brazilian music, but within that kind of Brazilian music spectrum, there are like all sorts of tempos that go on. I don't think this is particularly quick for a bossa, so I think it still quite fits into that quite nicely. But yeah, going back to like the kind of the simplistic vocal line, having those two notes does then give you the scope to kind of build around it. And I think that's a deliberate thing here. You're changing the chords around the two notes, which contrast those two notes and make those two notes sound different depending on what like chord is going on underneath them or what else is happening around it. There are some subtle bits of emphasis coming on here, like vocal harmony emphasizes the first time I think you hear Angel, you get a vocal harmony here, and then that kind of drops off going out, and I think that kind of delves into the lyrical theme slightly, because I think from memory it's talking about someone who might kind of seem like an angel but isn't necessarily an angel. So you hear it the first time and you're like angel, and you've got this like big backing that kind of envelops you with the backing vocal, and then that kind of drops off as you go through, and that doesn't really come back. So I think it's a good example of the music working really well with the lyric here.
So, I will say I can't quite follow, I guess, exactly what the story is that's going on here. I mean, like, yes, I understand that she's an angel, no doubt an angel, but beyond all of that, right, it just ends up being a bit murky. I love a song that tries to set a scene in a really heavy-handed manner. And Angel does just that, right? You start out verse 1 with evidence item number 1, and then start verse 2 with evidence item number 2. But Brad, I think the thing you were talking about, I did not expect to be able to draw a comparison between Black Midi and Kings of Convenience when I first put this album on. You've already gotten that reference in tonight. But here's my chance, I guess. And actually, funnily enough, I'm talking about the exact same song that you were, Marlene Dietrich. But it's the line on Angel that says, though she might be just slightly promiscuous. It's delivered in such a way that reminds me of Marlene Dietrich on Cavalcade, which quotes the shuddering neighbor who frets about women transforming into witches when they orgasm. And again, we've got that bossa setting that we're in now. We've got the one that was on Marlene Dietrich as well. So yeah, funny little line that didn't expect to be able to draw between those two albums here.
It's another 2 direct links between Kings of Convenience and Black Midi.
The same song.
Don't know if you discussed it, but the bossa nova aspect was pretty. Was that what you were talking about before?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That threw me as well. It's like, that's quite a strange thing to be happening here. That both of these bands are like meeting in this weird Venn diagram at this point. The Black Midi Kings of Convenience Venn diagram. I'd love to know.
Basically, if you want to appear on a ballpark music stream, then do a bossa nova. That's the end.
Duly noted. You both touched on it. I will say, you're a third of the way into this album. You do get the sense that there are some chords that you've heard before making pretty regular occurrences at this point. But, for me, it's not really mattered too much. Right. Let's move on to Love is a Lonely Thing. This is the first of 2 tracks to feature Canadian singer Feist, whose 2007 album The Reminder went gold in the UK, picked up 4 Grammy nominations on its way there. I was actually more interested in the revelation that she has done a split EP with Mastadon back in 2012. So clearly she is no stranger to collaboration, albeit in quite a different setting here. Cam, I was going to ask you what you thought about Love is a Lonely Thing, but I feel like I may have shocked you too much with the Mastodon revelation.
I didn't know who she was before I heard these 2 songs, but I think she's one I'm going to be checking out in the future. I might definitely check out that Mastodon split.
Just before
didn't see that coming.
Before you go too deep, I just want to say that Feist is a name that reminds me of other musical artists from a similar location. It sounds a lot more like a black metal name than you would get in an outfit like this.
It's true, actually. It's not a terrible point. I didn't really think about the name at all because I heard the voice before. I saw your faces there. I said it's not a bad point. I didn't mean to say it's not a terrible. You know what I meant, right?
Okay.
He got you good there, Brad. Jeez.
So we're just downhill from here. But no, that was a horrific point, Brad. Don't speak again. Oh, jeez. Right. Anyway, Feist. Yeah, nice voice. No, I just thought this was a beautiful song. Very light accompaniment with the guitar to some beautifully duetted vocals. Both vocalists complemented each other really, really well, which I thought was really nice. Which is what you want in a duet, really, isn't it? You can't do a duet unless you have that thing. But I think this was... So the way I felt a lot of this album is so beautiful and it's so nice. At no point is it reinventing anything. It's nothing I haven't heard in some of them, but I don't really care. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm listening to it and I just don't care that it's not that original, that I've heard this kind of thing before, because it's so well done. It's got such a subtleness to it in the songwriting. Every transition is absolutely seamless to every section, to the point where you'd be hard pressed to mark a verse, chorus, bridge, etc. On a casual listen. the melody's really cool. The progression again is just really gentle, but it's just so well done. It just ends up being an all-round really pleasant experience. And the ending where you get a small amount of all of the vocals together, so the two guys and Feist, it's just absolutely sensational. And I really, really wanted more of that. And Brad can tell me I'm an idiot now.
I just want to jump in because I think you made a couple of points that I wanted to touch on, and then we will let Brad speak because Brad's voice is, you know, not just of equal importance. I think it's of greater importance than ours. Let's sweet talking back. But yeah, you know, Feist is such an incredible accompaniment. Her voice is pure gold. And you know, the voices from Kings of Convenience, although silky smooth themselves in many respects, you have got a little bit of a gruffer edge, I think, especially with the one of the vocalists. I'm not sure what voice is Eric's and what voice is Erland's, but you know, it's one of them that carries a lot of this song from their end. But like, I think you can draw comparisons to the interplay between Bon Iver and Taylor Swift's vocals on Exile off Folklore. And if you're anything like me, then we can probably spend the next 4 minutes, 45 seconds talking about anything we'd like, as the listeners remember that song exists and immediately have to put it on. But yeah, I mean, like, I spend the first 2 minutes 40 of this song very frustrated that my favorite thing on this album, the harmonies, are used so sparingly. And lo and behold, it all crescendos wonderfully to that moment. It's an incredible payoff. And then the song's over. And I'm just like, I just want more of that. I just want more of that. But I'm greedy. I think it's fair of them to portion that out. And we have got more Feist to come later on.
I think though, but it's such a tease because it's literally 5 seconds and it's incredible. It's one of those like rare things when you get three really special vocalists together. It's just magic, isn't it? I mean, it's the most magic thing you can have in music is a lot of great voices singing in harmony. It's, you know, what everybody wants to listen to music for. You know, not that many people are paying money to see Yngwie Malmsteen shred anymore. I want to hear. So it just doesn't last long enough, and I really, really want more of it.
Yeah, I think I get where both of you are coming from. I think this is the first song we hear the nylon string guitar on, opposed to the steel string that's been kind of coming through. So it's obviously a more mellow tone, like straight off the bat. Again, some really nice imagery coming through here on the lyrics. Ours seem like oceans when desire burns. You know, some like really strong lyric writing. Being kind of free, kind of loose with the meter when this kicks off. It's like one of those songs where everything is about the melody, the vocal line, what is going on. There are like some bars of 4, some bars of 6, and I kind of didn't really pay any more attention to that because I was enjoying the song. But yeah, this is a song where it kind of progresses really nicely, develops really nicely, and the dynamic and the texture kind of builds as it goes through, as you've always said, building to that like 3-part harmony on the very last line, which is a very welcome kind of crescendo there. Yeah, Feist's voice is stunning, and it's kind of set in a bit more reverb, I think, than, you know, the lead vocal, which kind of gives this weird kind of feeling of distance between the two, but I think that adds to the kind of wistfulness of this. But yeah, you know, I think the development on this one was the thing that kind of caught my ear. The way you kind of start off with one guitar, one vocal, the second guitar kind of blossoms in as verse 2 comes around. It kind of like fills out, starts playing some more lead lines around the vocal. Some really pretty, again, instrumental parts here. Just kind of breaking the vocals up a bit. Yeah, it's really, really nice. It's really nice to hear another vocalist on this, and I think, as you've all said, it crescendos really nicely on that 3-part harmony on the end.
Well,
Great point, Brad. Great point.
look, so I think, like we've all said, we want more Feist, and we will leave Feist there for the moment, but come back to more of her later. For now, let's move on to Fever. And true to form, we go a little more upbeat again here. I don't want to overplay that kind of for the sake of it, because I think it's still a relatively chilled vibe here on Fever. I will say, considering the last 15 or so months, a song that opens with the words fever, you got the fever because you had too much fun with someone who is now gone and can't take care of you. It's just a little bit different than it would have done pre-pandemic. But yeah, what did you guys think of Fever?
I didn't even notice that. that's yeah. I mean, I don't think of fever and think of COVID, but I can see where you're coming from for sure. I use this nice escape rather than to be reminded.
I'll bring it back, baby.
You got a virus, yeah.
Do not listen to the Bee Gees, Matt, whatever you do.
You need to self-isolate.
Staying alive, man. Staying alive. Oh boy. Usually by this point in an album, I'm always on here going, oh, we've had 7, 6, whatever it is now. I want something a little bit more of a development. I want break a bit more and do something quite drastically different by this point. Just as an involvement. Maybe I should listen to more previously, but I just want an evolution through the album. And they don't really do that here. And I'm absolutely fine with it again. Having such a nice time listening to this album that I find it hard to really put a critical ear to it, in the sense of it doesn't really ever want to go, and it really asks you to be that in depth about it. Sorry, I've just dropped out. I don't know why. It never really asks you to. It just exists. It's really, really pleasant. It's not my favorite song on the album. It still fits nice and still structured well. It's got a really good melody, and the chorus is a standout here when it kind of descends and slows down right. It hits back into that fever, when it speeds back up again into the verse, and that's a really interesting part of structure. It has an awesome bridge. Really has an awesome bridge with the guitar. It kind of takes over and carries the melody thing. Has maybe some snare, some real drums for the first time in the album.
Yeah.
Which gives it a little bit more character and depth. But overall, guys, I'm having a really listening to this as a critical piece of music, because it just doesn't require that. It's so floaty, it's so dreamy that you just want to enjoy it, and that's not like me, you know that.
Yeah, shout out Dreadlocks, good to see you. He says easy fellas, new lay at minus Cam's face. Yeah, we're going minus Cam's face for a little bit here. We'll see if we can get Cam's face back up for you, especially now that you're with us. But yeah, drums, we've got drums. It's used pretty sparingly, and that's something that is usually a staple of our discussion, but yeah, I guess you guys had very limited percussive elements to go off of this week, in that regard.
I think it's interesting that you say that they don't really develop here, because I feel like this is the one where they do kind of start to kind of kick it up a gear and start to kind of change stuff up, start to bring in some new elements. I think it is very subtle, but I don't think there's anything about this album that isn't slightly subtle. So I think it does fit. but like you both pointed out, you've got like the first kind of taste of non-guitar slapping percussion kind of coming through here. It's again a nice kind of groove to this track. Some more really interesting note choice in the melody, especially that last line on the verses, which ends on that ninth, and it just reminds me so much of Sting, Englishman in New York. Every time I hear the ending on that ninth, it reminds me of that, like, don't take coffee, I take tea, my dear. That line in Englishman in New York, I just hear it all over this track, and I have to feel like that's like some kind of influence in there. There's more string parts going on. There's a nice mix of like pizzicato strings over the verses and the kind of arco, the bow strings. You get some piano bits coming in. You get some really unusual and slightly unsettling chord progressions where it doesn't really feel like it returns home. You've got, so I think it's the chorus where it goes between like A minor, F, A minor, and then to A major. It like throws you a curveball there. Like I said, slightly unsettling. The vocals build in energy as they go out. So verse 3 and 4, the last line is kind of rushed. There are more syllables, kind of getting crammed into the same amount of space, which builds the energy. And then it ends on this really, really, really nice, like kind of hypnotic melody. It's a super simple pattern, but it moves around through the chord changes, interspersed with nice licks on it's either violin or viola. I think the instrument at the end here is a standout, just the way it kind of swirls around you and just envelops you. I think this is a track where it does kind of develop for me, and this is, I think, one of my favorite tracks on the album. So
it's great. You mentioned the piano there. What I found really interesting about that was, it very suddenly establishes itself late on in this song, right? And then, because I think I mentioned it earlier, but this is another one where very late on you just hear a piano play a chord, right? And then next thing you know, it's taken over the focus of the song. You've got that long drifting outro there, which I think, you could probably still call a piano solo. But it very much stood out to me. I mean, this is some really nice lays on the beach type of music in the sunshine. It doesn't draw on the classic types of things that, that kind of music generally does. But it takes me away, and it takes me away in a way that some of the music we've been talking about before, never really gets its hooks into me. Right, Fever definitely does, and it's just like, I'm still going with you on this journey, even though I am drifting away.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was sort of getting at when I sort of trying to talk about how I can't really critically evaluate this song. Obviously, Brad's just proved me wrong by a massive and really well done evaluation of the music and all the theory and stuff behind it. But to me, yeah, you're right, man. I just want to be sat on a beach, a sandy beach, not a pebble beach. Cocktail in hand, listening to this band. I'm sorry, my video's gone completely, so you're gonna have to bear with voice for now.
That's all right. We've got an avatar of you on screen instead to signify that you are still with us, unlike earlier where we just crowded you out. So
it is slightly like talking to a toaster, but we'll make do.
Right, so let's move on to our next track. That is Killers. Cam, what are you feeling here?
Very mournful, melancholy intro. We're feeling real sad here, just done.
Sorry to hear that, dude. Do you want to talk about it? Live on stream?
I'll bottle it all in and just listen to them cry on my. But just stunning, really. Just an incredible progression, and then the melody kicks in to provide like one of the best moments of the album for me, and it's the descent on the second half of each um, line in the verse. I don't know if you know what I mean, where it like has the first, like the A line coming with the B, and it's got that kind of that descent. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. And I just absolutely love that. And it's really a testament to these guys and their songwriting ability that just a small thing like that, a small moment in a song, can stand out so much for me, and just to be an absolute highlight. I can hear it like now without actually having the music. I thought it was just absolutely incredible songwriting. And we're just drifting along again. I'm lulled along by this album so often. It just it's so uncanny how easy it is to listen to. You know, so far into the album, of a quite soft, not that many instruments, not that many dynamic shifts or anything, nothing crazy happening at any point. It's so easy to listen to, and I'm so much enjoying it. It's like the perfect music to zone out to, and not in a negative way at all or anything. It's like it will tell you when it wants you to come back in, when it's okay for it to zone out, and when it wants you to come back in. If you got those little guitar runs and things like that where it demands your attention a little bit more, and then other parts where it'll just lull. It's just awesome. I thought this was the best song on the album for me by quite a long way. The vocal melody in the verse was just unreal.
Yeah, again, it's an interesting vocal melody. It's not something that you hear every day in pop now. I still can't quite figure out what the song is about lyrically. It might be being dense. That is
It's
definitely a possibility. Matt, what
it's
do you
just
know?
it's just sad, you know? Like that's all that I think this song is, and we'll come on to a little more of this later. But Kings of Convenience are quite on the nose, I think, with their lyrics, right? On this track, you've got, in my play, my part is only one of two. What will happen to me is not up to me. It depends on what she will choose. Like, that's been in a lot of 14-year-old, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old guys' books of lyrics in the past, I would wager. My only question, I'll pass it back to you after that, Brad, is what does my guy have to hide here, right? Because early on, he was presenting evidence for the jury. And then on a track called Killers, he talks about being sentenced. He talks about people hiding their crimes. There is a real dark, gritty underbelly here.
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe the pretty music is evidence to be played to a jury at some point to prove that there's no way you could be a killer.
No.
It's not possible. But yeah, you've got like some like musically, this is more melancholy than wistful. I think we're finally there. Some kind of open sus sounding chords, really sweet guitar melody, especially on the outro. It's really, really nice. Again, this is another one for me that's not earth shattering, apart from the vocal melody, which is, an interesting one. It's the blood that heals the wound on the outro. The last kind of line that you hear. I think that's something that sticks with you.
Yeah.
But musically, not a lot going on. Lyrically, like I said, can't really fathom how the opening two lines kind of fit with the rest of it. But yeah, some nice moments in here for sure.
It's that it's the blood that heals the wound line. It just makes this song for me. I spoke about how some of this stuff lyrically passes me by, but what precedes that delivery is a lengthy section of wandering guitar that seems like it'll be another lengthy outro on an album that's got a lot of lengthy outros. but then you can actually hear the sound of like the lips being parsed, followed by the line being spoken so intimately that you feel like it's almost happening inside of your head. It is so well done. So well done. That's where I pick up on the close miking that I think, Cam, you were talking about earlier. Yeah, I mean, another vote for this song fits in that melancholy camp for sure. I am a full convert at this point. I think it's those bright bits of melody, I think, that are used very sparingly. Is that what you were talking about, Cam, about the that moment that you really liked?
It is just more so the vocal melody.
Gotcha.
There's like a descent. I couldn't, without sort of hearing it again, tell you exactly what that descent is, but there's like a rundown on the second half of the verse. So obviously there'll be like line 1 where it'll be an ascent, and then there's like a descent, a kind of melancholic descent. And it's just absolutely wonderful, man. You're holding the fort on your own at the minute.
There was 2 of me on stream.
Can never have too much, Matt. But yeah, I for me, this was an earth-shattering song. This, I think, on first listen, I was really enjoying, and going through and just being like, oh, this is really, really nice. I'm glad we picked this, by accident kind of thing on chance. And then it got to this, and I was like, okay, wow, these guys deserve to be paid attention to as songwriters, because that vocal melody is not just interesting; it's absolutely sublime. If we could do stuff like that, Madge, I think we'd probably have a much more successful career in the music business. So,
hey, man, they went away for 10 years to write this album, right? And they came out with something that hit you very deeply. I think it's worth being considered at times, and we got time, man. We got time. We can build
100%.
there.
But what I'm more saying is that is something to learn by, and I think anyone writing a vocal can look at that moment and learn from it, because it just makes you feel so much stuff, Just like you could be in the best mood all day, you feel sad as soon as you hear that. You feel things that, like, it's really quite immense songwriting.
Definitely. So look, we're gonna move on here to ask for help. And
I'm gonna skip this one.
I really want to ask how you guys feel about some of the lyrics on this album. Right? Ask for Help starts in a way that I would describe as wholesome when you see it written down. But I think others may take a different view, right? So to quote, it's if you got the will to do it, but you lack the skills to do it. Ask for help. If you've got a team behind you, but you lack a leader inside of you, ask for help. I mean, for me, the wonder of the harmonies that deliver each of these lines saves it all from being a bit of, like, I don't know, a unique management technique towards training. I'm keen for your thoughts, and Brad, because I can see you hands on face here, I'll start with you.
You know what? I tuned out most of this song because immediately the lyrics just made me feel like it was some kind of team building exercise. Wasn't there for it, I don't know, but it is nice, it's nice themes, it's like fairly optimistic and whatever, but all I can feel is that you're sat in some meeting room that you don't want to be in, and someone is telling you, if you don't know what to do, ask for help. It's just like, I've been at work all day, I don't want to come home and then listen to this, and that just like, it's probably like shallow, it's probably like not reading anything into the lyrics at all, but it immediately turned me off because I don't want to do a team building exercise at home on my own listening to music.
It is quite ham-fisted, isn't it? Like, there's no escaping how much of it is team building exercise. You can't get away from that. And I was gonna kind of go on the defense and say, well, English isn't their first language, but they're Norwegian and they practically speak English better than we do. So It's not even really an excuse.
Well,
For
you compare it to some of the other lyrics that,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Well-
that we've experienced so far, and it's like, yeah, don't fucking blue sky think me now.
And you know, it is ham-fisted to begin with, right? And you know, I think I've spoken. There's other places on this album where they are very, very, very heavy-handed in some of the things that they're trying to communicate. But you know, you juxtapose that. I think juxtapose the beginning of this song with the end of this song. You know, you have got some really wonderful touches. Like, wouldn't it be nice if you lose to value a choir to sing the blues with you? I think there are a few people that can evoke that type of emotion in that type of way, right? It's a very unique way of, you know, describing the value of team, right? As, you know, sometimes you do lose and you've got a choir of people around you. That was nice. That was nice. And that line in particular, it's got some of the most interesting melody on the album for me. I do lose a lot of it in... I do lose a lot of interest in the vocal melody, I think, at the beginning based on that. But, you know, with some of those touches later on, it's standout vocal melody-wise, I think, this song.
I don't know. I think other than feeling like a team building exercise on an away day that you've been asked to go for or forced to go to.
We've all been there.
Yeah, 100%. We've all been there. They're awful. Please stop doing them.
It's relatable.
Yeah, well, I guess there is that. But I mean, for me, after the high or well, the lows of Killers, this just wasn't the route to go. I think that made it even more jarring for me. And the fact that I didn't find the vocal melody interesting. It was still nice. And it's still recorded in a really stunning way, and the chorus is still really, really nicely done and everything like that. But I talk about this almost every week. I feel like there's always that song on an album for me that is just the absolute like kind of euphoric moment. Like this is Sphinx After Fortitude. Something like that. It doesn't feel. It just feels like, okay, well, I need to get through something to get me to the next song. And that's basically where I sit with it.
Yeah, there are some really nice moments here, and that's the slightly unfortunate thing about being so cynical about the lyrics. Maybe that, you know, like intro, you've got like the low acoustic riff. It's kind of interplaying with the plucked harmonics, which is like a bit of a different texture that we've not got so far. Vocal harmonies on this one, we've talked about vocal harmonies a lot, but it's a low vocal harmony. It's showing some like serious range here from whichever one of them is providing harmonies on this, but it's really nice. It works really, really well. Interlude, there's like a nice rising lead guitar part on the instrumental. Dynamic shifts, drops to almost nothing in the last chorus. Unfortunately for me, it's just all eclipsed slightly by the lyric, which yeah, I just couldn't get on board with.
I'm still, I think, in the wholesome camp. And I don't know if how much of that is like, cast your mind back to when we started this discussion and I said, you know, when was the first time I listened to this album? It was on a very stressed out day at work. So okay, you know, I may have thought that I was going completely crazy at this point and like some of the words from training were just coming through my ears, but there's
if someone had said to you that day, right, now we're doing a team building exercise and we have to build a fort out of chairs.
I would have been very, very confused because I work from home. Why? I don't have that many chairs. How do you expect me to do this?
That'd be your wife coming in and saying, "Do you want to make a fort?"
So there you go. I'd feel very comforted. I would feel lovely and wholesome, much like, as I say, I think I fall down on this song quite generally. I am going to probably take those lyrics that I started off our discussion of this track on and see if next time I'm on a team training session, I can start delivering them. And if anybody raises an eyebrow, because, you know, I don't think that'll be the case.
See, the reason
Cameron, do you know what this reminds me of?
What?
Do you remember that? Do you remember a maths teacher that we had at one point?
Yeah, maths is a wonderful thing.
I had a chemistry teacher as well, who did something very similar, and it's the only reason that I know what an ionic or a covalent bond is.
Nice.
Well, it
I was
worked.
going to say about Brad that you know the reason we feel differently about this song to Matt is that he's the guy that organizes those team building. He's in favor of those. He loves them.
Yeah.
You just wait till ballpark music training day, baby, and we're gonna have all of these songs back to back.
If
Look.
you don't know what EQ setting to apply, ask for help.
I think it's probably good if we leave ask for help there on that note, and we instead head on down to Catholic country. And hey, what do you know? Once again, we have got Feist for company. So Cam, what do you think about this song?
I adore the progression on this song. It's so nice, and the melody accompaniment with the rhythm and the cadence of the vocal is so satisfying. I think the lyrics are quite interesting from the start. You kind of like delving into a little story, and I just thought it was a real pro level song. You know, all around it just had lots of professional in it, and that sounds like it'd be boring. It's not in any way. It's really, really, really cool. It's got a lot of. I say that because it's got a lot of things you just don't think to do as kind of an amateur musician, as I am, but maybe you would as a more professional, with more studio experience and more songwriting experience. It's awesome. We've got Feist back with another vocal, and that again really complements well. This was exactly the song that I feel like I needed after Killers, but we didn't get. Really catchy, quite grooving, and this is the first song on the album that feels quite different to me. It's quite layered overall as well. It's a really, really good song. And then you got that double bass later in the song. It just sounds huge. All the vocal layers are absolutely incredible. And again, another world-class vocal recording. I've got to say, it's so intimate, it's so close, and it adds so much to the music. Yeah, this is another massive highlight on the album for me.
I am really interested that you said intimate there. And I mean, I'll tell you why. So I looked at another I looked at another summary of this album, right? And they described Catholic Country as the most intimate track on this record, right? So what I'm saying is I've caught you out. I know that you're just regurgitating that review. No. What I'm saying is I listened to this track and I noted down that they had said this feels very intimate. I didn't so much get that sense. And I was going to ask you guys if you agreed with that assertion. Cam, I guess you do, Brad.
I guess I can see where it's coming from. I think lyrically there's some interesting stuff going on here, which does make it feel intimate. Like first verse, you've got it's 1 o'clock in the morning and we're in an apartment in the capital city in a Catholic country. It's quite literal. It's quite like world building. It does drag you into that like kind of intimate setting. And then it goes off to like more dramatic imagery, I think, in like the second verse. Yesterday she took me to a wintry garden past a forest of conscience on a curvy road. How stark is the contrast there between verse 1 and verse 2? You've got a really literal like world building kind of drags you right into the scene, verse 1, and then verse 2 is just like we're off to a wintry garden past the forest of conscience, you know, like I think
Very
it's
relatable.
a really like really nice contrast of the two there. But I think the first verse definitely drags you into that intimate space. I'm glad you mentioned the groove, Cameron, because the groove is cool. It's a really funky kind of intro. It's a really nice chord progression. The bass, again, you've already mentioned, but it struck me straight away. It's a like really nice, round, kind of fat, tight bass sound. Something about this chord progression reminds me of something I've heard, and it's gonna haunt me until I figure out what it is. But
Let me throw a name at you quick. I've forgotten the name. Flight of the Conchords. Have you listened to Flight of the Conchords? The two Kiwi guys.
Are you reading directly from my sum up discussion?
Well, Matt just accused me of plagiarizing from another review, and now apparently I'm plagiarizing your sum up.
This ain't looking good for you, Cam. Gotta say. Come up with an original thought, huh?
Oh
But
yeah.
yeah, I can draw some comparisons. Fair. But yeah, something about like chord progressions specifically is very, very familiar to me. I'm not quite sure what it is. Really nice to have Feist back here. Vocally, the kind of delivery is super relaxed from her and the other guy. It's nice. It's a really interesting song here, and I really wish they just got rid of Ask for Help and just gone straight to this. It builds really well. Awesome build from the bridge. When the percussion comes in, you get another build up to a 3-part harmony from one vocal to two vocalists to three vocalists, increasing the energy and the width as it kind of envelops you. The only slight disappointment I think with this track to me is that it doesn't end with one of their like really good instrumentals that they've proved they can do. Some really like dramatic climatic instrumental. Like I don't know, maybe if it was another one, people would say it was a bit formulaic because it always ends with an instrumental outro. But I think here it would have worked really, really well. Can you imagine that like big vocal build up where you've got one vocalist, second vocalist, third vocalist coming in, and then drop to this like really cool instrumental with some, great guitar melody, and that's what kind of takes you out. But I think here it stops dead, and I think it must be done deliberately because they've done the instrumental a few times on this album already. I just feel like this was the opportunity to really make an impact with it here. I think it would have sounded great. So yeah.
I think just to add, that the way that they're passing back and forth over that middle section, the more I know the more I know the more I want. That may well be my highlight of the album. Right there, that might be my moment of the album. It's just all of those wonderful harmony moments culminating in the way that I left the other track with Feist that I really wanted there, and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah, the call and response thing is interesting because it's never like oblique. It's never like massively obvious or in your face, but there are some nice elements of call and response in there.
Yeah, I think just to go back a touch. Obviously, you'd spoken about the intimacy aspect of this. I just wanted to give a little insight into why I thought it was so intimate. So there's twofold for me. One, there's how close it is. It almost feels like someone's whispering in your ear, like very kind of like gently lulling you in your ear. And I know there's a lot more going on musically, but if you just had that vocal, it would feel like someone was trying to kind of really close whisper in your ear in a kind of sing-song way. And I think it's really, really well done. But also, with what Brad was saying, I think the lyrics are deliberately juxtaposed in their relationship building, and they're talking you through the phases of that in the sense of when you first meet someone, it's all very generic, it's all very general world building, and then later on you get more deep, in-depth information, don't you? Like you're talking about the Winter Garden, as opposed to Catholic country. So I think there's a lot of intimacy that comes along there as well. And I think Feist vocals again are a little bit more pulled in. They're less reverby to me than they were earlier in the album, which feels a little bit more intimate. Overall, just thought that was really what made it feel like probably one of the most intimate moments of the album.
I think that's a great defense right there. Yeah, I mean, vocal production particularly stand out here. I won't go back over the ground that you both spoke about earlier, but this was very much where I got that sense about, something being incredibly well produced, when, you know, there may well have been a temptation to go very raw, I guess, when it's, you know, two guys plus Feist in a room with, you know, relatively limited set of instruments, but loved seeing that double bass making an appearance here. But let's move on to our penultimate track, and that's Song About It. Brad, what are you feeling here? You're feeling like you're stuck on mute.
I'm feeling like I'm stuck on mute, yeah. Yeah, Song About It, whatever it might be, I'm sure it will be revealed fairly swiftly. You know, it's another four chord pattern, finger picking harmony pop part. There's some nice percussive guitar elements coming through here. First one is pretty much like what we've come to expect, I think. There's some really nice like instrumental interludes in this, some nice kind of like fast legato lines coming through, which kind of add to the energy. We managed to get all the way to the bridge before we find out what it is, which is love. Clearly, it's always been about love,
It
but
was love
you
all
know,
along. Who'd have
it was
thought?
love all along.
Who'd have
But we
thought?
get to the bridge before we get there. So that was a shock. Yeah, you know, some nice guitar parts here. I think that was my takeaway from this. Really, nice guitar parts, nice legato lines, and yeah.
I think I was saying earlier, this album doesn't really ask for active, in-depth listening. It's quite hard to listen to it in that regard, but when you're doing a more casual listen, it's a lot easier. This is the perfect song to exemplify why. It's really hard to get much depth out of this song, but it's a really nice little thing to listen to. And it does a really good job of not demanding your attention, but showing you when you exactly the moments you should be paying in-depth attention to it. So, for example, like you've got that almost like drifty, dreamy verse that you've heard so many times in this album that you could almost zone out and just experience as a collective sound. And then you know your attention isn't really required for that part. But then there's that quite stark interlude with just some picked guitar, where your attention is a little bit more. You know, you're perked up. It sounds different. You can hear it more, a bit more, which is really cool. And I think it's just the perfect example of what I was talking about earlier in that sense. It's really clever, and it's a really clever way to layer an album for me. You know, having parts where you demand attention, parts where you don't, and on subsequent listens it'll probably be the other way around. It was really cool. Yeah, I feel like this whole album they haven't actually missed with the chord progression for me yet. They're always simple, they're always quite basic, but they're always really seamless, well done. Melodies on point with it as well. Another example of it, another nice song.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
there are moments where they do drift slightly beyond, like, you know, the chord progressions you expect, but I think it's interesting that you say this isn't a song that demands your attention, which I think is probably true. It does kind of bring me back again to, and we've managed to go maybe 4, 5, or 6 songs without mentioning Simon and Garfunkel, but it does kind of bring me back to like some of those like classic songwriters, and one of those songs that is like kind of a ditty in a way, kind of a like it is something that could pass you by, but it is quite clever and it is quite nicely done the way they have done it. Almost, I think it's bordering on kitsch, but I think the production and the tone and the warmth of it kind of pull it back from being kitsch for me.
Yeah, you know, I am glad that you've mentioned Simon and Garfunkel here, because I didn't put that down in my notes. But I distinctly remember hitting this song and going like, yeah, that whole sense had kind of disappeared over the last few tracks. You know, I very much felt like I was listening to Kings of Convenience, and I wasn't sure if it was because they had established their sound to me again, you know, coming to this duo for the first time. But I think you can draw some very clear lineation between this song and Simon and Garfunkel. But Cam, I kind of get what you're saying. I'd probably draw the comparison maybe more closely to what you were saying earlier about this not being a track that, this not being an album that demands analysis, right? Song About It was probably the one that I felt that the most about, right? I'll give you the example. This was the most earworm track of the week for me. That very simple talk about it, dream about it, joke about it, worry about it verse was one that I couldn't shake out of my head all week. But yet I really struggled to get notes down for this song. I really enjoy this song, but it hits differently to many of the other tracks on this album. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm close to being out of words about Peace or Love. And it's a symptom, I think, of this album taking me on a journey that's more spiritual than analytical most of the time. Song About It, again, you touched on this, Cam. It's a perfect encapsulation of something I feel so much about this album. I love when it's on. I'm sad when it's gone. But fuck if I could tell you much about it when it's not playing. And yeah, it's interesting to hear that you've come to a similar conclusion there.
I think it's hard to come to a conclusion, really, isn't it? Like you've got 11 songs here of absolute majestic songwriting, melody, chord progression. Not really a terrible song on the album, which is unusual. A lot of really quite brilliant song of the year worthy contenders, and yet I don't feel like there's a lot to say about it. You know what I mean? I was like you on almost every song this week. This is one of the albums, spoiler alert, I've enjoyed the most listening to in this entire year. Is up there for me, and yet I really struggled to write anything about it. It just never asked you to do that.
Brad, sorry, Brad, I get the sense you disagree.
I was just going to say is, I love when it's on, I'm sad when it's gone. Is that a lyric from this track? Have you just written yourself into the canon of this track?
Turns out it was me all along. I was Kings of Convenience. Surprise.
Song about Matt. I was just going to say as well, I never really felt like the Simon and Garfunkel thing went away. It just got less interesting to talk about. Killers, to me, think of a song like America, something like that. Boxer could easily be. I mean, even the more bossa tracks did stuff like that. They had those kind of, not quite in the same way, but they had very similar moments. Be an example of that. So I don't think it ever really went away. It's just so obvious, and all the way through, you kind of have to stop talking about it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
and I think, sorry to cut across you, Brad. I think, speaking of stopping talking about it at some point, we have got to move on to our closer, Washing Machine. And just as I started this track by saying I got a little distracted by the title of the opening track on this album, Cam, I would be remiss if I didn't give everybody the opportunity to drink here.
You're going to make me talk about Sonic Youth.
I mean, you've said Sonic Youth now, so I think we have to drink. It doesn't matter if you go and talk about it some more, but...
Well, I didn't actually ever make that connection. I didn't make the Fleetwood Mac one either, to be honest with you. Because most of the time I don't look at the track names until I'm writing down the track by track and writing down the notes, so I just listen through. Yeah, I mean, don't have much to say about Sonic Youth here, but it's quite an interesting song. It's like contrasting things going on the start here, and they almost sound like they're not supposed to work together, but they do. That's not a very technical explanation of what's happening, but that's about as far as I could hear. It's like, what is happening here? It's different. I'm not used to it. I'm not sure if I think I do.
I got you. Don't worry.
Thanks, man. But when the vocals come back in, it's magnificent. The chorus is wonderful, dreamy. The strings are perfectly arranged. No round nice way to end an album. A bit of urgency in the pre-chorus too, which is quite nice. Nothing rocking the boat, but just a great way to kind of like pull you back out. But I would love to know what happened at the beginning there, because that's the most interesting point of this song. But yeah, I just want to put the album back on at this point almost immediately. It's one of the easiest to listen to.
Wow. So intro-wise, yeah, I mean, it's obviously a bit of a different kind of tonality, a different sound that we've already heard on this album. It's kind of got an outside kind of feel to it. It doesn't feel like it's all necessarily playing in the same key, and that's because there's like this G flat minor pentatonic thing going off over a G flat major chord. So there is a bit of like subtle dissonance in there, and it kind of makes it feel a bit more bluesy, which works well with the kind of funky vibe that they're like putting on overall, like that blues kind of funk crossover thing. But yeah, aside from that, it's a really nice little groove for the last track of the album, and it works really, really well here. Almost a kind of punky sounding bass line that you get coming through. It's either punky or new wave. It sounds like The Cure to me. You know, if you just very reductively listen to the bass line, it sounds like Boys Don't Cry. We've got some more great vocal harmonies coming in the second half of that first verse. You've got some nice subtle, again, subtle is a word that could be used to describe, you know, the majority of this album, but some subtle call and response stuff. It's never done over the top, but it just works really nicely. It's just really great songwriting. We get kind of a bit of return to the strings that we've heard before, instrumental bridge, violin drone, and a real simple kind of guitar melody, guitar part to kind of take us out. I think this song really does wrap up this album like perfectly for me.
I lost count how many times I've tumbled round inside your washing machine, hung myself out to dry to regain some sort of self-esteem. Those are probably some of my favorite lines on this album. And, you know, Cam, like you said, there is so much going on when those lines are delivered. You really do feel like you're bouncing around a washing machine. I'm really interested that, you know, I think both of you said this as well. You know, I've loved everything up until this point. Washing Machine really feels like this album has started to warm up a little bit and is starting to stretch its legs. I think there's so many weeks where I use that incredibly overused metaphor about a band finding an extra gear at points in an album, right? And Washing Machine, I think, you know, you're finding an extra gear here. You could maybe potentially argue that it's the first time that they shift up on this album. And, you know, that's very much between the urgency that's in the music, the back and forth nature of the vocals, building vocal melodies, all of those things. But yeah, I mean, as you both alluded to, as a closer in the streaming age of music in particular, it works very well because it always means I want to put this album straight back on. Because, you know, it's a track that's over just as quickly as it's begun, I think, compared to a lot of the things that have preceded it. But it feels like them pretty well at their best.
Can't disagree with anything you said. Can't add anything more. Honestly, it's just a great song, great way to end the album. And like I said, I ended up just rewinding it, putting it straight back on many times as soon as that song.
Well, I tell you what, in that case, let's move on to our sum up chat then. Brad, why don't you get us started this week?
So I think this is a really nice album, and I think everyone has probably heard the word nice far too many times here. You know, there is, like I said before, when I came into it, I wasn't gripped from the start. Rumors, Rocky Trail, Comb My Hair kind of passed by me a bit, and I think that's partly because of my mood when I was listening to them. but there are some standout tracks, some things that definitely grabbed my attention. I think from Angel onwards, this kind of had me a bit more gripped. This is a band that's been around for a while, and yeah, they've not released an album for a while. They're kind of credited with some of the like folk revival stuff that happened when they released their first album, which was Loud is as soft as the new Loud, or
Yep. Bang on.
something like that. Yeah. Again, more folk revival bands in the news recently, but we'll save that one for Ballpark Showers. But yeah, it's nice. I don't think it ever really pushes any boundaries. I don't think it ever really blew my socks off in a way that, it's just like, this isn't something we've heard before. I think there were moments where they got close, and I think this is a band that I don't want them to wait another 10 years to release an album. I want them to kind of release another album in the next 2 years and kind of be a bit braver and go with some of the tracks that were a bit more out there and kind of build on that. That's what I would love to hear. I know I said you were plagiarizing from my sum up, Cam, so I'm going to skip that part of it. And yeah, it's a great album. It's a really easy one to listen to when you're not trying to analyze it. It's a bit harder to squeeze some stuff out of certain songs, specifically Ask for Help. I'd never want to listen to that song again. For the rest of the album, I could easily listen to, and it would easily make a rotation of like when you just wanted to kind of put an album on and just kind of disappear into it and not really think too much about it.
I'm gonna say we're a couple of weeks removed from it now, but what an experience it was going from Lloyd Banks to Kings of Convenience. They feel like two ends of a very non-linear spectrum. And I think for me, let's get this out of the way first. I've struggled to sum up my thoughts about this album this week in a coherent way. We've all touched, I think Cam and I have touched on that at certain points. Brad, you've got a lot more to draw on a lot more nous than either of us do. But there's been some moments in our discussion tonight that I think have still proven that this doesn't stand up brilliantly under close scrutiny from time to time. But really, honestly, that is so much of its charm. Being frank, I think the real reason that I struggled to write down much about this album is because I ran out of superlatives very early on. This is genuinely one of my favorite albums that we've covered now. If we weren't doing this stream, I never would have heard of it. And it's audible beauty incarnate. I am a sucker for bright melodies, perfect harmonies. This album has that in spades and then some. Execution, Cam, like you've said, is a masterclass. And I'm tempted to say that none of the 5 years spent recording this album have been wasted. But yet, in total contrast to some of the works we've had in recent weeks, it's never complex for the sake of it. Remains perfectly accessible throughout, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing to drift away with. Easiest add to my rotation so far, and I think considering I knew nothing about this band coming into it, it's a real hidden gem, as it were. Urge anybody listening to this to give this album a shot.
I'm going to keep mine very short and sweet. It not only goes into my regular rotation, it's going to be an album buying. I'm going to be getting the record of this shortly. I messaged you both in the week saying, is anyone else really glad that we picked this album by accident? And oh boy, I was. Just what a wonderful band, honestly. What an awesome experience it was to listen to this album. There's so many moments that I want to listen to now and just haven't heard you guys talk about. Getting everyone's thoughts on them. Just absolutely incredible. I think probably one of the highlights of doing the streams. Like you said, man, I'd never even heard of this if we weren't doing this and we hadn't just picked one top of our head. And yeah, it was it's a great experience. Go straight into my rotation, and I can't wait to see them live. Hopefully someday.
That is something I think for me as well. I'm envisaging a cafe bar with like candlelit tables or something like that, and then Kings of Convenience playing, probably with like a nice bottle of wine or something like that. But yeah, they go on that list too for sure.
I've remembered what the sum up thing that you plagiarized was, because I never really write down my sum ups. It might be obvious to people watching, but you mentioned Flight of the Conchords. I think there are moments where like some of the tracks on this do verge on being Flight of the Conchords, but not deliberately funny. Again, I'm talking about Ask for Help, but I can't help myself. The song sucks.
I mean, actually, I was thinking more Flight of the Conchords for Catholic country. It's got a
Oh,
very
really?
Conchords vibe to it. Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I mentioned it. Then I thought that's probably where you've heard that sort of thing before.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Now I want to listen to Flight of the Conchords, but yeah,
Bowie
Yeah.
Sensei.
yeah, I just want him to like push the band. I want him to release another album soon, and I want him to go into more of that like slightly more interesting kind of territory, which they're obviously capable of doing. Maybe step away from the Simon and Garfunkel, go more into a Yusuf Islam kind of vibe, and see what happens. I think there's a lot of promise here.
Yeah,
I'm happy whatever they do. I'm gonna be listening to whatever they do next, if they do anything next.
that is
Whatever way they want to go.
that is, I think, 3 votes for more Kings of Convenience. I almost said Flight of the Conchords, but that is 3 solid votes for more Kings of Convenience. Look, let's.
Flight of the Conchords.
It's fine by me too. Yeah, let's leave Kings of Convenience there then, and look ahead to next week. What are we feeling for next week?
We've got quite a few options for next week.
We do. What are you gonna list off?
So I listened to the Tyler the Creator record today. That was pretty cool. 16 songs long, and the 15th track is 8 minutes long. And if our Lloyd Banks experience was anything to go by, I don't think we want to pick that one. But I will implore you to both listen to it. Great album. If you don't listen to the whole thing, just listen to the song Wiltshire. Great song. Tyler the Creator, really great artist. There's the Mountain Goats record that came out. There's a Modest Mouse record that came out. There's a Lucy Dacus record that came out. There is a Dark Throne album that came out. So take your pick. Unless there was something else that came out, I can't remember.
There is a Beartooth record that came out. Listen to a little bit of that. Something that I think it's a little closer to some of the roots of our streams. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Hobo Johnson put out a record earlier this week as well. But I will not force you guys down that path, despite my undying love for Hobo Johnson.
I did think for a second you were going to say there's a new Weezer album out.
There is a new Weezer album out. It's an NFT.
I think either probably the Lucy Dacus record would be a good shout for us, or that Beartooth one. I'll leave it up to you guys, really. There's so much out this behind. I'm probably going to listen to most of it anyway, whatever we talk about.
Have you got any preference there, Brad? If we're going down those lines, I don't know much about Lucy Dacus. I know I've listened to some of the Beartooth tracks. I think the Beartooth stuff is like, if you're happy to have some commercially metalcore. I don't know how that lands. So
So we've got a choice between commercially metalcore or featuring Julian Baker and Phoebe Bridgers.
Yeah, basically.
or Hobo Johnson.
Oh boy, I don't know. I think this is Matt's decision. I can't be the one to decide this week. I don't want the pressure.
You got to pick, man. We both put one forward to you.
Oof.
Just flip a coin. Do it like you did last time. Flip
All
a
right,
coin. Flip a coin, Matt.
toss.
What do you want to call?
We've got one vote from chat for commercial metalcore. We've got another vote from chat for Hobo Johnson. So I think it's still down to flip a coin.
Okay, so who wants heads out of you and Cam?
I'll take heads.
Oh, it's tails.
So what are we going with?
Fails.
So we're going
As long
with-
as you know it.
Are you down for something weird? Are you down for something weird?
I really, really enjoyed that none of us had ever heard this before this week, and we just picked it off the shelf.
I will.
So I'm trying for that kind of thing.
I will say I don't necessarily think you guys are going to enjoy it, but I listened through to that Hobo Johnson record earlier. It's very unique. It's unlike his previous records. And I think you guys should listen to it. So if you were pushing me down, you know, what do I think? I do think that's the one to try next week.
I can't find it anywhere. What's it called?
The Revenge of Hobo Johnson came out on Wednesday.
Ooh, doesn't that disqualify?
Okay, so we'll do Beartooth, just like we didn't do Black Midi.
Let's do the Hobo Johnson record. I'm happy with that.
Fantastic. I come into it with no expectations. Try it out. Much like you've tried this out. Try it out. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. I tell you that now. So right. I think
Coin toss is never wrong.
Coin toss is never wrong. What did coin toss land us with last time, though? Did it land us with Van Weezer? Oh boy. I think you'll enjoy it more than that. I mean that very genuinely. Mostly because I know you haven't got a floor probably lower than Van Weezer. But hey,
the previous Hobo Johnson record.
Sorry?
The previous Hobo Johnson record.
Yeah, this is very different to that. Very different to that.
I'm going to mind.
I didn't enjoy the fall of Hobo Johnson, but I have enjoyed a listen to the Revenge of Hobo Johnson today. So anyway, that's next week. I think it's about time for us to wrap up this week because we have had a wonderful discussion about a wonderful, wonderful album. But hey, has it taken a lot for us to get to this point right now? So hey, if you are with us on Twitch, then please stick around after we say goodbye for a little bit of post-stream fun. If you have missed any of our discussion or want to hear it again, we'll have a recorded version of this plus one other, I think, going up on our YouTube channel on Sunday. If you are watching that slightly disjointed recorded version, then we will be going live again next Friday, 8 p.m. GMT, for another album discussion. Hopefully without the technical hitches. But yeah, we've had a change of background. I'm still going to shout out Millie Draws a lot on Instagram. That's spelt with a Y for our logo. If you want more Kings of Convenience, then head over to kingsofconvenience.eu. And if you want more ballpark music, then follow us on Twitch, subscribe to us, and hit the bell on YouTube, and check out our link tree. That's at /Ballpark Music UK, where you can find all of our socials. Cam, we haven't got an image of you here, but I get the sense you still have enjoyed it tonight, right?
Parts of it. Parts of it were good. Parts of it were less good. Yeah, it's been nice. I enjoyed the album. That's the
good. And Brad, I think we just about held the fort down. It was a bit scary for a few minutes there, but what did you feel? Did you have fun?
Yeah, I feel like we got there in the end. I feel like, you know, from the 40% of the way through, we were there.
Why? I have had a lot of fun as always. We will see you all next time. Stay safe.